Magna Carta 2 is an action RPG made in Korea. Yes, surprisingly enough, this game is not Japanese, but rather Korean. Who would have thunk? Magna Carta 2 was published by Bandai Namco and developed by Softmax. A quick note, by the way, despite the fact that this is a sequel to Magna Carta Tears of Blood on the PS2, they actually have no relation to each other. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Ah, Unreal Engine, my nemesis, we meet again. This game's visuals, despite using this horrid game engine, actually look pretty damn good. However, it still suffers from many of the same issues apparent using said horrendous game engine, such as unloaded textures and, for whatever reason, terrible looking grass and trees. The character models in this game look quite good. They express emotions well during cutscenes, they look detailed, and their animations are smooth. Not to mention, the designs for said characters are unique and well implemented. Kudos to the artist, and sorry if I'm butchering this, Mr. Hyung Tae Kim. I gotta say, this guy has done some really great artwork for the game. The environments in this game, however, are a bit more mixed. Some locations are well designed and have a unique look to them. Some are a little more bland and uninteresting. But in a technical respect, the environments look just fine. While definitely unpolished in some areas, this is not a bad-looking game. The music in Magna Carta 2 is solid. There are some standout tracks here and there, but it didn't particularly wow me as a whole. I could safely say that if you're the kind of person that likes to play games while either listening to your own music, listening to a podcast, or chatting it up with buddies on Skype, this game's a good choice, since for the most part the music doesn't really complete the experience. Again, it's not bad, like I said, it's solid, but aside from a few tracks here and there, it doesn't really impress. However, what does impress is the voice work. The voice acting in this game is probably some of the best I've heard for a game or anime. There are a lot of seasoned voice actors lending their talent for this game. Stephen J. Blum, Johnny Young Bosch, Crispin Freeman, Wendy Lee, Michelle Ruff, Yuri Lowenthal, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, Laura Bailey, and the list actually goes on of very well-casted and experienced voice actors. This is easily one of the strongest aspects of the game, because due to such high-quality voice work, they do a great job of selling this game's story. Which leads me into another very strong part of this game, and that's the story. Now, before I do start praising, I do have to kick it down a notch in this area. The dialogue early on in the game is really bad. It's cringeworthy at times. I understand it's early on in the game, and the game wants to teach me how to play. But why in the love of all that is good and sacred is Wendy Lee herself physically telling me to press the right trigger and the A button and the X button? It's acceptable in something like Metal Gear, because that is subtly breaking the fourth wall and is being humorous about it. However, in this game, it's literally just trying to teach me how to play the fucking game. However, what makes it so much worse is that these pockets of shitty dialogue are invalidated due to the fact that right afterwards, the game provides a fucking tutorial screen which literally explains exactly what was just told to you outside of the cutscene. Why couldn't we just have this instead of wasting the poor voice actor's time by telling us to press buttons? Now, aside from a few snags here and there, the dialogue, for the most part, is actually just fine. And it does get better the more the game goes along. The story itself is also very interesting, and so does the world the game takes place in. Now, while it does fall into some cliches, such as the amnesiac protagonist, how many times have we seen that? It actually executes this very well and makes good use of this extremely tired cliche due to its good writing. While I did anticipate a few of the plot twists here and there, the game actually threw me for a loop more than once, and I was very pleasantly surprised by that. Now, in my opinion, a great story is nothing without strong characters to push it forward, and this game mostly succeeds in this area. The game has a good cast of characters, Some of them develop nicely over time, and the group grows closer to each other throughout the course of the game. Juto, our protagonist, especially develops well throughout the game. Starting off as a slacker and a whiner, he ends up being a reliable and well-rounded character. I also particularly enjoyed how his backstory was unfolded to us later on in the game, making good use of that amnesiac cliche I was talking about before. As for the other characters, I have very few complaints. I felt they were well written, likable, and entertaining to watch. However, I never felt that strongly for the main villain. He does a few despicable things here or there, but he didn't really stand out much. Not necessarily a bad villain, but definitely forgettable. Looking past that, this is easily one of the strongest aspects of the game, and it does a great job of getting you to care and getting invested in the world and its characters. Now it's time for the gameplay, which I'm more mixed on. This game is an action RPG, but there's a little more to it than just simply mashing away at the A button. In this game, you have a stamina meter. Whenever you attack, your stamina meter increases. When it maxes out, you go into a state of overheating. If a character is in an overheat state after attacking, they can't attack anymore until the meter empties out. Now, this is both a unique and frustrating aspect of the game. While the idea behind it is kind of cool and what they do with it is somewhat interesting, the fact of the matter is that going into the overheat status after a while can get really annoying. What's worse is that the first couple of seconds you go into this overheat status, you can't even move. This makes it needlessly frustrating. Overall, the combat is okay, but it feels really slow, and worst of all, never evolves throughout the game. You do learn more skills, and there is something called a chain break, which if done correctly can replenish your stamina meter for 2 characters, and can play a crucial role in battle. However, it never evolves past this. The game makes one attempt to make the combat deeper in the form of co-op techniques, but the conditions required to use these techniques are kind of ridiculous, and I never used one. And quite frankly, I never needed to either. I beat the game just fine. After a while, the combat's lack of depth really hurts it, and it just feels slow and tedious. However, I do have to say that the moves that you can use towards the end of the game actually look really cool. It's definitely a functional battle system, and I wouldn't say it's completely unenjoyable or even that it's bad. There are even some really cool boss fights in the game, for example. But the fighting is not what's going to hold your attention in the game. It does its job, but could have been so much more. The game also makes use of skill trees, which I actually quite enjoyed. Each character can use one of 2 weapons. For example, Juto can use one-handed and two-handed swords, and the 2 styles drastically change his combat abilities and fighting style. Both fighting styles have their own individual skill trees. Whenever you level up, you get skill points. However, the amount of skill points you get isn't very much at all. Because of this, it's very difficult to max out both trees in one playthrough. So it's better to stick with just the ones that you like and just build from there. These trees allow you to get stat boosts, but more importantly, allow you to learn fighting techniques specific to that weapon type. It's a good solid system, and while not terribly deep, offers a nice sense of progression. Something else that offers a nice bit of depth to the customization is the enhancement system. Each weapon has a different amount of command that you can put in them. Commands have different properties such as increasing stats, elemental resistances, and even reducing the points necessary for executing skills. It also becomes much more useful the more you play the game. Find more and more commands with different properties and advantages. Using them to your advantage can surprisingly drastically improve your character. In the end, I would say that Magna Carta 2 is a solid game. It definitely has its weaknesses, and it's understandable if some just simply can't get past them. But to those that are willing to get past them, will find an enjoyable game with a great cast of characters and an interesting story. While the combat does try to be somewhat unique, it does fail in some regards, but is by no means bad or game-breaking. And the character customization methods available in the form of skill trees and weapon enhancements adds a good sense of progression and control over your character growth. If you're itching for an action RPG with a good level of customization, great characters, an interesting story, I say give Magna Carta 2 a shot. This has been Shintai, everyone. Take it easy.